Hiya, and welcome to Haydn Behind the Music Stand. I'm your host, Patty Ryan, and with me is Erin Kelly, who is the Education Programs Associate at the San Francisco Symphony, and we'll be talking about plant-based diets. Welcome, Erin. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Dude, we know each other because we were roommates for how many years? Like 3 years? When we first moved to San Francisco?
Back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably about a decade ago.
Jeez, no, a little less than that.
Yeah, I know.
It's gotta be less than that.
A little less, but not much.
2011?
2011.
Oh my God, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I know. It's terrifying, right? The 90s weren't 10 years ago.
No.
Even though I keep thinking they are.
I know.
It's just like a weird mental thing. Yeah, no, we met through a housing group, I think, on SFCM.
Yeah.
The San Francisco Conservatory of Music website.
So you're like, right? Yeah, you're the trifecta of Apartment D, the originals of Apartment D.
OG, yeah, the first group.
We are basically the first three people to room together when we started our masters together at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. And we're both cellists, and we were actually put in different studios. You were in Jennifer Culp's studio, and I was in Jean-Michel Fontenot's studio, right?
Correct. So rivals, technically. But we
got
along fine, I think.
One of my favorite stories is the story about the couch.
The couch.
This wasn't your story, was it? I didn't steal your.
No, it wasn't, but it almost was my story because I thought about it.
Okay. The couch. So at our apartment, we had basically it was a 1-bedroom apartment that we were splitting 3 ways. And I think I had the living room, or what was supposed to be the living room.
Yeah, you were in the living room and I was in the dining room. Grad students on a shoestring budget.
In San Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
had to stretch that out.
Right. So I had this space and we hung out together like all the time. It was just
pretty much
a permanent hang. It would be so perfect to have a couch here to just chill on and watch movies or whatever. So San Francisco is known to have just random furniture, random pieces of clothing, just random things just on the side of the streets, right?
Appliances, shoes, you name it, you'll see it on the curb.
Yeah. And I think the idea is people just don't need it anymore and don't want to sell it, so they just put it on the side and you can just take it.
Yeah, I think of it as streamlined Goodwill. Like, why take it to Goodwill when you can set it on the curb and then someone can just pick it up right there?
Right.
Which is basically what we did with that couch.
Right. So I looked outside my window once and I saw that there was this burgundy couch and I was like, Erin, there's a couch. And we were like, no way. So we went down and we took a look at it. I think it said For Salvation Army on it, which in retrospect.
It did. It had a note on it. Oh my God, you're right. I forgot about that.
But we were like, but we're so poor anyway. We just need this couch so bad. And so the two of us hulked it up the 2 flights of stairs or something.
I don't know. It felt like 20, but it was a big couch for 2 tiny people to get up those stairs.
Yeah, and we did it. And it was such a comfy couch. No bed bugs, thank goodness. I actually think that came from within our apartment. That's another apartment.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, because I think we saw the people who had just taken it out look at us like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, we tried to sneak it up the stairs. We were worried, like, what if they come out and see us taking their couch that they just put on the curb upstairs when they had left it for Salvation Army? But we barely got it upstairs in time. And yeah, it was a great couch. I took it with me to my next apartment. Brown.
You did? I don't remember that.
Yeah, I did. It was very well used. And at one point, it was kind of faded from the sun.
Right.
From years of being, loved.
Yeah.
Right. And sitting outside maybe. So I remember taking like a scented marker, like the cinnamon flavored one, and like trying to color the felt upholstery on the outside. Yeah. All in the front. It did, but it still looked terrible. So eventually I got another couch. It was so sad. I think I did a cover for a little bit, but yeah, good times with that street find in the inner Sunset.
It reminds me of the teamwork that we kind of had together where we would just be like, yeah, we got to do this. So.
Oh yeah. And I mean, that happened with also a dining room table that someone set outside. So that's not the only piece of furniture.
Wow,
do you remember that?
No, I forgot about that one.
It was like a brand new IKEA table and chair set.
Oh yeah.
And we literally saw the people across the street like set it on Lincoln.
That's right. No.
Third.
Yep.
And literally like we were falling over each other. We were so excited. We're like, oh my God.
I think we started running outside. If it was free, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because they were still putting it out. We can't let that sit on the curb for more than a second because it'll get snatched up. And like we all ran outside and like half of us weren't wearing shoes. I'm like, okay, no, let's put shoes on and then go across the street to get the table. Yeah, another great find.
That's true. I forgot about that. Oh my God.
Street furniture.
Yep.
It's a Bay Area thing. It happens all over in Berkeley too. People just leave stuff out.
Right.
Some people say it's dumping waste, which is, I think, semi-accurate, but I found a nice outdoor table just down the street. So
yeah. I paid it forward when I had to leave the apartment years later quite rapidly. And so the best thing I could do was actually just put all my dishes, all my things out on the street. And I remember, it was kind of sad to see it go, but at the same time, it was kind of like, well, here I'm giving back all the things that I'm
paying it forward.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that's too funny. I remember we all used to cook a lot, but especially you. And I remember one day you were so excited, like, I'm going to make homemade dumplings or pot stickers. Like, I'm going to do it. It's going to be so awesome. And so you like spent all day, you made the dough, you rolled it out, you made the filling. It was like a multi-hour, very elaborate process. And then they were like, I swear there's like 100 of them and we couldn't eat them all. And so we're like, oh, we'll just freeze them. And so we put them in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer, like a giant Ziploc bag. And then I just remember a couple months later, be like, oh, we have all those dumplings. Let's get them out. And so we went and got them from the freezer, but we hadn't ever frozen anything like that. So
right. I have learned my lesson.
You're supposed to freeze them individually. So basically what we took out was like a pillow size mass of dumplings all frozen together, and we just tried to chip away at it. And it's just, I just remember you and Cindy and I like just cracking up and be like, wow, we're such idiots. And now I know, I freeze things separately before putting them in a bag together. But I just remember I have this picture of you in my head with this giant, it was seriously like the size of
it was huge. Yeah.
It was really hard to break them apart too. And you were just like, we were laughing and like so distraught. It was just hilarious. That's like one of my favorite memories of you.
Well, I
don't know why.
No, well, because it's just something I would do, I think.
Yeah.
Like have a good idea and then just not quite think it 100% through or something.
Like almost there, like so close. And then of course you think that it's successful and then we didn't realize until, a month later, we're like, wow, so stupid. We probably could have just done a quick Google search on that.
Right. No, I have made many dumplings since and have not made that mistake. Good. I actually thought you were going to tell me about the abbreviated nickname I have for dumplings.
Oh, dumps?
Because that just slipped out. I think probably in that moment I was like, oh my God, we have so many dumps.
So many dumps. And I was like, phrasing, but okay. That, and we had that big pie list because one of the first things.
Well, the apartment rules.
Yeah, we had all those. Oh my God, the rules. It was like a whole sheet.
Yeah.
God, does anyone have that? Did anyone?
I think I took a photo of it.
Oh my gosh, if you can find that, I'm sure it's gold of
inside
silliness.
jokes. Yeah.
But we had so many pies on that list that we made.
Probably too many.
Oh, way too many. It was like unbelievably extensive. We're like blueberry, brambleberry, blackberry. It's like, okay, everybody calm down. So yeah, a lot of good times cooking and baking at apartment D.
Yeah. One other memory that just popped into my head were the sink quotes.
Oh yeah, I thought about that.
For whatever reason, the way that our water temperature was at our kitchen sink, it was a lever system. So if you moved the lever up, that would dispense water. It had to be dead center for it just to be normal warm. But if you moved it a centimeter to the left, it became scalding hot. It became basically like you could boil some tea in that water. So.
Yeah, 0 to boiling and burning your hand off in like 0.3 seconds.
Right.
That was a health hazard. I can't believe it was legal to have that type of water heater in that apartment. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah, right. But again, as like college kids are just like, well, whatever. But yeah, so
like, oh, this is fun. This apartment has character.
Right. So yeah, so basically whenever we would burn ourselves, we would most often exclaim some kind of profanity, and some got very creative, let's just say.
Yeah. And with just the layout of that apartment, I mean, you could hear everything. My bedroom was a dining room, so if Patty burned her hand on the sink, you better believe I would hear about it.
Right. So, Erin, is it time for the Spitfire questions?
Oh, sure. Let's do it.
All right. Mozart or Beethoven?
Beethoven.
Shostakovich or Prokofiev?
Shostakovich.
Netflix or video games?
Netflix.
Basil or cilantro?
Cilantro.
Nice. Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Harry Potter, 100%.
Symphony or chamber music?
Chamber music.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Always coffee.
Favorite practice room?
I feel like my favorite practice room was when I was in my undergrad at Eastman, and it was using Steve Doan's studio because it was kind of in the stairwell, kind of hidden. It had a window, and it just felt like a secret spot that no one knew about because you had to check out a key to open the door.
Got it. A favorite professor shout out?
Probably Glenn Mackin, again at Eastman, a humanities professor.
Okay.
Really cool guy.
Yeah.
I took a couple of his courses in undergrad, and he just was really, actually, I remember when we first started taking his class, it was his first year when I was a freshman.
Oh.
And he was so nervous. He would giggle all the time. So for some reason, we called him Giggles in a positive way. That's what his nickname was among students. But now I look back and I think, oh my gosh, he was such a great teacher.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like you never realize it until it's 5 years down the road in the middle of the night.
Nice. Okay. Most transformative performance experience?
Oh, wow. And as a performer or in the audience?
Either or both.
I would say in the audience, I remember seeing American Youth Symphony perform Mahler 2 when I was maybe 16, and that just rocked my world. It was really amazing.
Next piece you'd like to learn?
One thing I always wanted to learn was the Kodai cello sonata.
Oh, yeah.
The Opus 8, the solo, with the
so tuned down C
epic.
string.
Yeah, and is it C and G?
You're right. It's both. Yeah.
Okay.
I started learning that when I was finishing up Rice, and then I just left and haven't gone back to it.
I feel like everyone had a quick dabble in it. Like I remember practicing the first page, and I was like, "This is so amazing," and then I never got farther than that.
Yeah. Well, it's also the practicality of tuning down your strings is also, it distributes the weight on the cello so weirdly that it messes up the intonation in more ways than just what it seems to.
Yeah, it's not like it just affects that one piece. It affects every other piece you play.
Right.
Your cello needs like a week probably to recover, and you're tuning both the C and G down a half step or whole step.
Yeah, exactly.
And then back up again, and then all the other. Yeah, it's just a nightmare in that sense.
Right.
Not practical. Unless you have a separate cello, and maybe that's your Kodai cello.
Sure, right. But I don't have that money.
Someday. It's good to have goals.
So, Erin, you have completed the Spitfire question round. Congratulations.
Ooh, yay. Why, thank you.
Unscathed?
More or less.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. All right. So, Erin, can you tell me about your music origin story and sort of how that's gotten you to where you are today?
I started playing when I was, I think, in 4th grade, because at my public school district in LA, that's when they started allowing kids to rent string instruments. And I liked the cello because it was big and because everyone played violin and I didn't want to be like everyone. I remember it so vividly going to pick up my instrument with my mom at the local middle school and signing it out. It was $35 to rent for a year. And it was like, I know, that's it.
That's a steal.
I know.
That still needs to happen today.
Yeah.
We need
I don't know
that.
what, absolutely, or free, I mean, that's a pipe dream. But it was definitely affordable at the time. I just happened to I feel like I got lucky with my first private instructor, that she was really dedicated, and that just led me to keep playing. But I initially decided that I wanted to pursue it more seriously a little bit later than most people. So by the time that most students are ready to start auditioning for conservatories, senior year of high school, I was not ready at all because I had only gotten serious when I was maybe 14 or 15, very serious. So I took a year off after high school to just basically practice all day and get ready for as many auditions as I could. Yeah, I got into Eastman, the Eastman School of Music in Rochester. It was very cold there. I had a great teacher, Steve Doan.
And you also worked with Hans Jensen too.
Oh, I forgot about Hans. Oh, I love Hans. And I love Steve too.
I just remember all the stories about Hans that were just so ridiculous.
He's wild. He's a great teacher, but he just kicks your butt every day. He'll get in your face and be like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this fingering? That bowing is stupid. You know what? Here, put your cello down. Let's run down the hallway. And he'd make us run up and down the hallway.
It's and training you like an athlete or something.
Exactly, but that's just to simulate the nerves that you might experience in an audition.
This is Hans-Jürgen Jensen, by the way.
He was just brutally honest. It was so straightforward. There was never any, I'm disappointed in you, or there was never that type of judgment that you sometimes get from teachers about your perceived moral failings because you can't play that lick from Prokofiev in tune or whatever.
Sure.
He was just so objective in a way. it was for all of his students. It was just across the board when we would have studio class. He'd roast everyone. And so I remember we all had to learn a Popper etude one week.
Oh, geez.
And we just sat in a circle and he's like, your turn. No, your turn. He would just
no.
Yeah, I swear. He'd be like, did you practice this? Don't answer. I know the answer.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, I remember playing through it, Popper number 22, and it starts easy. And then, of course, like all those etudes, and then it gets really
hard. Yeah.
And everyone would start and they'd be confident. And then the second you make one mistake, you'd be like, and eventually he'd stop you once you made enough mistakes. But it was all for the betterment of everyone. And
right.
He was just so fun. I thought I'd be so scared of him, but he was just such a genuine and also happy and hilarious guy that I loved working with him. So that was my last year at Eastman when Steve Doan took a sabbatical. Hans was in there for a semester. And then I did the grad school audition circuit and ended up at SFCM back in California. I very much missed California when I was at Eastman. It was so cold and so dark. I didn't realize how much I would miss
You need sun.
So I was happy. Oh my gosh, it's real. Vitamin D deficiency. Whew. You can go on a rant about that. And Rochester is just a funny place. So I was really happy to come back to California. And that's where we met.
Yay!
In San Francisco. Yay!
It was meant to be.
It was. I think so.
And then you finished the master's at SFCM. And then after that,
I did.
You kind of took a swerve, right?
A little bit. I mean, I was, freelancing, taking gigs, playing a lot of weddings, recording, some teaching. And then I was also a teaching artist with the San Francisco Symphony's Adventures in Music program.
Right.
And I did that for 2 years.
And that's where you go into the community and you set up these music sort of outreach presentations, right?
Correct. So the Adventures in Music program is a program run by the San Francisco Symphony where they send small ensembles into every single public school in San Francisco. So it's 81 schools. And ensembles give educational presentations about concepts in music and how they connect to certain common core subjects. It's a really fun job. You get to see all the schools in San Francisco. No 2 days are the same.
Right.
And so I had a lot of fun doing that, and I found it really rewarding, probably more rewarding than the performing that I was doing in the more traditional sense, like concerts or recitals, because the impact just felt more real to me. These kids are sitting right next to you and some of them have never seen string instruments before. That was such a transformative experience for me that the longer I worked doing that type of work, when we started creating, the program that we presented in the schools, it felt like a really natural fit for me. Like it felt like it was something I was really good at, explaining certain concepts in music in a very accessible way and connecting small little thematic chunks of music and concepts together with a through line. I loved that. It was totally my jam. And so after serving as a teaching artist 2 years in that program, I really was curious about what the administrative side would be like. How do you design a program of this scale? Because that program, it reaches over 23,000 students. So it's a huge scope. And how is this possible? I wanted to, because I was in the trenches, so to speak, and I wanted to get a greater sense of a larger scale of how a program of that size can exist, basically in a public school system in a city as big and diverse as San Francisco. And so when an admin job in education opened up, I jumped at it. And so that was a big factor in why I kind of pivoted from the performance side of things, even though my degrees are in music performance, to the education sphere.
Right. You also had some admin experience from the SF Ballet, I remember too, right? Before that.
Yeah, I worked at the SF Ballet for a bit with the ballet school specifically. I did that while I was also working with the symphony. So they have a trainee program for young students. And so the schedules really complemented each other, and I was able to string together a decent salary coming out of grad school, like in the middle of the recession. So who was I to shy away from that?
But it was a lot of work. I remember you were pretty tired.
Yeah, it was. I had some crazy hours. Like some nights at the ballet, I was working till 11 p.m. And then AIM performances, the Adventures in Music performances at schools, can start as early as 8 a.m. And so you have to be at the school site at 7:30. And so it was a brutal schedule for a while there, but I was just so happy to have work that
you're just going to work hard to make sure you sustain it. Yeah, totally. But that was the main reason actually why you ended up leaving Apartment D, was because the ballet had housing for you. So that actually would cut some costs, I believe.
I know. Yeah. It kind of, our rent was so cheap when you think about it.
It really was, but it's still if you can get free housing somewhere in the city, you gotta.
Yeah, you have to say yes after a certain point. So yeah, that's why I left Apartment D.
Yeah.
You're right. I was sad to leave because I was the first to leave.
Yeah, you were. That's right. Because then Paula took your room. That's right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But actually, Erin, wasn't one of the main reasons why you transitioned from your performing degree and into the admin side of music is because you actually have a pre-existing condition and you really needed stable health insurance.
Yeah, that's definitely true because as you know, I have type 1 diabetes. The Affordable Care Act made it a lot easier to get care.
Yes, thank you, Obamacare. Sure. Yeah.
Yay! Yeah. I would be lost without it. In retrospect, I think that was also a bulletproof explanation for why I wanted to move away from performing, because I feel like so often in the music world, when you start deviating from the more traditional path of being a solo artist or a chamber music artist or practicing for that orchestral audition, you can experience weird amounts of shame and guilt. Some of it's self-inflicted, some of it inflicted by, a lot not intentionally, but by your peers. And so I still feel this way, that with my musical training, then going into an administration role kind of feels like you're selling out a bit. And so it was a motivator, and it was also securing health insurance. It was a motivator and also a really surefire way to kind of reinforce the decision I had made to pivot away from freelancing. I did like freelancing, but it also was stressful. It was after a certain point, I was like, I thought about it all the time. And I remember, doing all these random side gigs, and they were kind of fun. And then I thought, well, what if I'm doing this in 10 years? What if I'm doing this in 20 years? What if I'm doing this in 30 or 40 years? And I didn't want that for myself.
Right.
It's a great career path, and it can be super lucrative if you combine it with teaching, and minus a pandemic.
Right. Jesus.
And fun. Yeah, right. Sorry to bring that up.
Well, no, it's just so real, but
I wanted to want it more, but I didn't. And so finding something that I was really skilled at, working in music education in a broader sense, it was a natural move for me. But yeah, the consistent health insurance has been great. I'm not going to lie about that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so important for you because without insulin, Yeah,
that's expensive. Those vials are not getting cheaper. But yeah, that was definitely a big contributor to that shift, although not the entire reason.
But I have to say though, Erin, I'm really grateful that I met you and that we actually lived together, because you really educated me on a lot of parts of the healthcare industry and a lot about, of course, diabetes that I wouldn't have naturally learned on my own. And even if I had learned from a book somewhere or whatever, it's not the same as living with.
As having a diabetic roommate. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because, of course, there's levels of sensitivity when, talking about it, but we always wanted to make sure that you're doing okay and that you weren't getting too ketonic, that you weren't
ketoacidosis.
Right.
Ketones can impact your body in multiple ways. We can talk about that later.
Sure. Basically, we didn't want you to get too high, or we didn't want you to go down to get too low. So we anyway,
it was like I always overprotective roommate a little bit,
Sorry.
Like, you don't want me to go low, just hand me a juice box.
Well, I was thinking like I love glucose tabs. I remember loving glucose tabs. They're like giant Smarties. It's like
I know. My favorite is the raspberry flavor from Target.
Oh,
Whenever I can get my hands on those, I'd be like, guys, look at the bounty I have brought back to Apartment D. And you'd be like, what are you talking about, Erin? You're so weird. But yeah, happy to educate and talk. I'm pretty open about it, but there are different levels, I think.
And the thing is, at some level, you don't want people to identify you based on that one thing, right?
Like, oh, that's
labeled
the diabetic person.
Exactly.
Like, that's the sole identifier. It's like, I do other stuff and I have a personality. And so no one wants to be pigeonholed. So I get it.
So diverging back into Erin's work, what do you do as the Education Programs Associate at the San Francisco Symphony? Is it just the AIM
title
program?
Is a mouthful. The Adventures in Music program is one program that the Symphony runs. There's another program called Concerts for Kids, and then there's Music for Families and Youth Orchestra. So there are a number of programs. And so predominantly I work with the Adventures in Music program, which serves students in San Francisco Unified. But all of our other programs reach a broader constituent base throughout the Bay Area. And so I'd say probably 20% of my work is with those programs. It's a lot of writing of curriculum, training musicians to go into schools, recruiting musicians to go into schools, monitoring site visits. Mm-hmm. When schools shut down, it was very interesting. We had to make a very interesting pivot. I mean, everyone did, to remote learning, and hundreds of performances for our AIM artists were canceled because schools closed. And so that was a big shift this year. And for the next year, we're kind of reinventing things to align with distance learning. It's a whole nother monster.
I'm not envious of your position right now.
Oh, I feel like even the school administrators have it way worse because the California Superintendent of Schools released this like 62-page document outlining reopening plans and how to navigate that, how to hire people and teachers, retain teachers, how to ensure equity. It seems impossible. So we can try and find a way to fit the SFS education programs into wherever they serve everyone best. But everyone who's a teacher or a school administrator, they have a long road ahead.
Yeah, 2020 is such a weird year because on one end, the world is telling you that we need to stop because we have to try to limit the number of potential deaths with COVID. But at the same time, then there's a social justice movement that's telling us we need to do more. We need to go out and actually try to make change. And I think, of course, they complement each other. But when it comes to education, that is something where you could really proactively make change and reach more people, reach people that maybe weren't. But then at the same time, then you're just stuck indoors, or you're stuck not being able to actually go out in physical nature and do the things that we're doing. It's like it's this cognitive dissonance in a way that I
think that's why everyone's so tired all the time, is because you're constantly having those battles on every possible level, with your friendships, with your work commitments, with any projects you're working on, with trying to plan for the future. And then financially, I want to donate to the bail projects. I want to donate more to all these. And yet I'm unemployed, or I was just furloughed, or my hours have been cut. And so it's constant. And so I think that's just, the fatigue is real. It's so real.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you, healthcare workers. Thank you, people on the front lines. That's including my sister as well. Yeah. And I just really hope that we can get a vaccine as soon as possible.
Racing to the finish line. It's that brings up a whole range of ethical questions.
Of course. In a safe manner. I really want.
Yeah.
We need to cure quickly.
Negotiating these trade-offs is constant, but the stakes are way higher now.
So Erin, how you doing? You want to take a break now?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back from the break. So, Erin, before the break, we are talking a little bit about our upcoming subject, which is a plant-based diet. And the last time that I saw you in person, obviously pre-COVID.
The last time you saw me, I was eating a hamburger.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's what I was going to say.
Totally like me.
Okay.
Yeah, the times have changed, I would say.
And you were just telling me.
And wings, I think.
And then you told me that you wanted to talk about plant-based diets, and I was like, "Oh, she's a vegan now." And then you're like, "Well,
what happened?"
Well, yeah. I'm totally interested in this whole new transition for you.
Yeah, it's a big shift because I was definitely a big meat eater, and moving to a plant-based diet might be one of those things that happens when you're in the Bay Area for too long, but I'll never know for sure. Yeah, I started switching up my diet kind of slowly over the past 6 months. Yeah, since December. So what started it, have you heard of Whole30?
Mm-mm.
It's like a dieting, it's 30 days where you just basically eat whole foods. You can have meat on this diet, no dairy, but only whole foods. So no refined grains, no bread, no refined sugar, butter. You can't even have beans, actually, like legumes or not.
Okay? Oh, really?
It's just, it's designed basically as an elimination diet because it's so common for people to have food sensitivities and food allergies, and it builds over time. And so if you start this diet and do it for 30 days, then you can
set your system.
It's kind of a reset in a sense. Although I didn't really feel like it was a total reset, but it definitely it helped a lot. And so, as a person with type 1 diabetes, you would think that your doctors would ask you about your diet or your lifestyle, but they really don't.
They just ask about your
kind of
levels.
like so many types of medicine. It's in numbers like, oh, your lab results look good. Here are your prescriptions. Let's check in 6 months. And I was listening to another podcast on it with doctors with type 1 diabetes. And they were talking all about how basically, and this is so true because it was my whole life, when you're diagnosed with diabetes, you're taught to eat low carb, to take less insulin. And so you should definitely try to restrict your carbs. And that's how I operated my whole life. Basically, I read their book and it kind of confirmed what I already knew, which was that high protein, low carb, I'd be like, oh no, I can't have fruit. Oh no, it'll spike my blood sugar. And I just stayed away from it. And it was ridiculous because on this Whole30 diet, you're only supposed to eat, fruits and starch, whole foods. You can have potatoes. I don't know. Going on that diet, because my sister put me onto it. Also, like after the new year, it happens right after the holidays. And so you can kind of detox from all the holiday drinking and partying.
Right.
And it made me feel better, but it didn't make me feel that much better. And I was kind of like, well, what is that? Because you can still eat very high fat content and you're eating meat products. And so when I read this book, it's called Mastering Your Diabetes. And first of all, I was turned on to it because the authors have type 1 and type 1 diabetics are often lumped in with type 2 diabetics and it's a different disease. And so I was like, I can trust these guys. And they just presented all this research about when back in the day when insulin was discovered, they used to put type 1 diabetics on high carb, low fat diets and like bread, sugar, but very low fat. It didn't even matter if the carbs were super processed. It didn't matter because it just dramatically changed their insulin sensitivity. And I was like, this seems crazy. And so coming off of Whole30, basically the only thing, you already cut out dairy, you're already cutting out refined foods. They suggest just high carb, like whole plants, fruits. I eat like 5 bananas a day now. I use less insulin. I know, and I use less insulin.
Yeah.
I know, because when you're type 1 diabetic, you're like, oh no, low carb. I'm low carb. And everyone does it. And no one really ever talks to you about your diet. And so after reading that book, I made the switch and it's just pretty shocking.
And you say you use less insulin.
I use less insulin now, eating 300 or 400 grams of carbohydrate a day than I did on a low carb diet. Easily. It's crazy.
I'm baffled.
I know. I'll have to send you this book, but because livestock, like animal livestock, is so bad for the environment and it's also so bad for your health, I was kind of inching toward eating less animal products just because. And don't get me wrong, I love burgers. I miss chicken wings. But from a health perspective and from an environmental perspective and just price, like high quality meat is very expensive. It just seems like, okay, like what do I have to lose if all I have to do is cut out meat when I've already cut out everything else and then just switch to, the hard thing has been making it really low fat because you have to eat less than 30 grams of fat a day, which is really, really difficult. I didn't realize how difficult it would be. I know, it's like kind of mind-boggling.
So what is a typical thing that you could eat on your diet but then would make the fat content too high?
When you're cooking a lot of like vegetables, I always want to like roast them with olive oil. No way.
Okay, so it's the olive oil. It's basically the that fat.
Well, oil, literally fat, because, and there's so many diets that are like, oh, olive oil is good for you. And you know what? They're not necessarily wrong, but it's just such a high calorie nutrient and high calorie food, but it's also its nutrient density is like, it's worthless essentially. It doesn't have vitamins, minerals, anything. You don't, besides flavor. So cutting that out was definitely a big change.
But you do still use some oil, right? Oh, you just zero oil.
No oil.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I know. It's hard sometimes, but actually when you start, they suggest buying really good nonstick pans.
I was going to say.
And at first I was like, oh, no, stainless steel for life. But now it's all nonstick because...
Or even ceramic is fine too. I use ceramic pans. Yeah.
That's hard. It is hard to maintain that. Yeah, but oils, in this method, they basically divide it up into green light foods. You can eat as much as you want all day. So any vegetable, any fruit, go for it. And so that's basically, I feel like that's like 80% of my diet now. And then there are yellow light foods, which are higher in fat content, like avocados and nuts, only because they can kind of tip up your fat consumption to a level where it'll impact your insulin sensitivity. If your insulin sensitivity is sacrificed, then it's hard to eat the amount of carbs that you're eating because it really messes with your whole body. And then the red light foods are oil and alcohol. Yeah.
Sure.
So
So high carb, low fat, high carb, low fat.
Mm-hmm.
And sugars don't necessarily matter to that. Like, of course, you're not going to go outside and start eating like rock sugar or something like that, right? But
no, well, you're not supposed to have refined sugar, but in this book, they identify all these early studies where they kind of tested these theories of insulin sensitivity. And the most important part was that the fat content was
low.
Very low. I think in one of the control groups, they just like gave them sugar and white bread, and their insulin sensitivity was comparable to the group in a whole food, high carb, low fat diet. And the people who were on a low carb diet actually used more insulin than the other two groups.
Right.
And it was just,
so why would
from like 50 years ago. It's crazy.
So why would people perpetuate to you this other reality that you should be having low carb?
You know, that's one of the big mysteries. And I think part of it is because endocrinologists, the doctors who work with people with endocrine diseases like diabetes, they're specialists and they're great, but they're not trained to be nutritionists. They really aren't. And that's why they don't really ask you about your diet. They care about helping you manage your medications and keeping your levels in range, your blood sugars in range. So it's so pervasive though. It really is like baked into everything because everyone is taught that and no one questions it. Even when I read this book and listened to these doctors talk, I was like, that seems crazy. And yet here I am and I have the best blood sugars I've had in my life. I've lost weight. I feel way better. And I never could have imagined that even a year ago. My kitchen is full of fruit right now. Seriously, bananas. I eat like a mango a day all the time. And I never would have imagined that because like, oh no, low carb, low carb, low carb. And it's totally not true. It's crazy.
That's nuts.
Because, well, the thing is low carb diets and tight insulin management do get you really good numbers. That's the thing. I think one of the more long-term issues that people aren't so aware of is that your cholesterol is going to go up. Your blood pressure might go up very slowly over time, but yet you still have this really good management. And so a lot of diabetics use the keto diet, which is like almost no carbohydrates. And the thing about that is in order to do that, you're eating fat all the time. So you have to eat animal and dairy products. And I've read so much about how bad they are for you and how there's even one study that one of the reasons that the immune response that is triggered that causes type 1 diabetes might be because parents give that child too much cow's milk when they're young and something in the lactose. It's like a major endocrine disruptor. And I just remember reading about this one doctor. He like grew up on a farm and they had chickens and every once in a while they would slaughter the chickens and there's fat, that white fat. And he recounts in medical school watching a bypass surgery. He's like, it looked like they were pulling chicken fat out of this dude's arteries. And that's because that's exactly what it is. Once I read that, I was kind of freaked out.
Right.
Because, well, nutritional guidance in the US has always been a mixed bag and people are generally distrustful of the government. And so people just kind of do whatever they want. I had never even really questioned what I was eating. And yet I thought I was so health conscious. And I was like, but really, have I really thought about this?
Right.
And I think it was causing a lot more problems than I realized.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of things like eggs, for instance, were such a tumultuous topic. Some people are like, you can't eat eggs. It's going to clog your arteries.
Yeah.
And then there's like, no. There's so many good vitamins in the egg yolks that you should be eating eggs. And there's just so many things where it gets confusing after a while, like what's actually true and what's not. Right. And of course, that's progress of science as well as to tell you certain things are fine.
But to be honest, it's mostly lobbyists. Like when you look at any study, who's funding it? When I started really looking at that kind of stuff, it's like, oh, this is by the Milk Board. Oh, this is by the XYZ meat conglomerate. And they push really hard. Nutritional guidelines are published every 5 years. So in the year preceding when those are published, they push really hard for certain studies to gain traction. And so you'll see the cover of Time magazine. It's like, oh, red meat is good for you. And it's like, when you really look at the study, in addition to thinking about who financed it, it sucks because it makes you question everything. It's like, what is this? I hate that it's become
created this, capitalist.
Yeah, capitalist. They always say exponential growth is called cancer in the medical field. So that's what's driving these studies and these kind of broad guidance. And I always thought I was immune because I'm like, oh, I'm health conscious, but I wasn't. And now I don't want to be the dogmatic plant-based diet person, but now I'm just like, oh my God, it's crazy how much I used to eat, how much meat I used to eat, especially if you're doing a low carb diet, protein all day.
You know, I must admit, I've gone through phases of that as well, where I just cut out carbs and I would just eat a chicken breast.
It works though. Short term, it works. It really does. It'll help you drop water weight weight and pounds, it really does work. It's the long term. I think that's what people, their attention span is short. And, I want to lose that 5 pounds for my trip in a week or two. And you know what? I've done it and, cut out all the carbs and it works. But as a long-term dietary plan, it's really bad for your health.
Yeah. So my personal diet, and this is one that I've done ever since high school, is I don't eat red meat. I like to say I don't eat mammals and I only eat two-legged or fins. So I eat chicken or fish and I eat vegetables, of course. I will eat eggs and I will eat some byproducts, yogurt or something. I drink almond milk and that sort of thing. So, I mean, I have a hybrid mixture of this.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was doing too. But I ate red meat.
Yeah. But I was trying, my violist in my string quartet is a vegan and she, of course, makes excellent food, but there's
you have to get really good at seasoning things when you're plant-based because you have to.
Yeah, because it's more palatable.
Yeah.
But I've started thinking for myself, not just for the health reasons to do
the
it,
potential benefits,
but more so for the environmental benefits and also more so for the sustainability. I mean, I hate to say, but yes, this current pandemic has started because of a bat. But if anyone has watched Pandemic on Netflix, it's a Netflix documentary. I don't know if
they haven't because I'm living it. So
I don't it happened. So I started watching that documentary. I kid you not, like in November of last year. And there's many episodes, and they're anyways. Well, I had no idea. But yeah, long story short, they talk a lot about how a number of ways that these crazy viruses are created.
They jump from animals to humans.
Exactly. And the fact that we are constantly cranking out these animals for our benefit is, anyway, long story short, I'm like, maybe I should really change my diet. And I love vegetables. There's nothing wrong with.
Yeah. My thing, I was just like, what do I have to lose? Like, if I hate it, I'll just go back. And then it's just way easier.
Right.
There's no way to make tempeh taste good in my mind. Still disgusting. But yeah, I say anyone who's thinking about it, just try it because of all the reasons you talked about. Humans encroaching on nature has definitely led to this pandemic. That combined with the environmental.
The carbon emissions.
The methane, especially the methane. At the scale we're doing it.
It's not sustainable. It's no longer sustainable.
And I remember someone pointing this out to me. So the keto diet, you eat mostly meat. I remember a friend was on it. He had a Ziploc bag of bacon he just took around with him to snack on. And a doctor, said, everyone should be on this diet because it's so good for your biomarkers, like your cholesterol in the short term, your weight drops, all these good things happen in the immediate time frame. And it's just like, how could you scale that? The amount of meat that's produced is like insane right now. You want to have everyone eat 95% meat all day. It's like, that's insanity. How would you even do that? I never thought I would become a plant-based diet cheerleader, but because I was so kind of cynical of it, and now here I am, and it's like easily one of the best decisions I've made. Health-wise. Think about it, Patty. You can do it.
I will. No, absolutely.
Try it. If you hate it, you can always go back. But
I mean, and
you can also do it gradually. It's not like you have to cut out everything overnight. My fiance and I kind of did it in phases. Like first we had already cut out dairy, and then we cut out red meat, and then I think fish was probably the last to go. But at that point, if you're not having dairy products, we're an almond milk household too. This podcast is brought to you by
I know, right? Hey, if I can get a sponsorship, that'd be great.
There are some good fake meat products out there. Beyond Burgers are like so good. And just give it a shot. I mean, what do you have to lose is my thinking.
Economically, has it been cheaper for you?
Yes, it is cheaper.
Yeah, because
meat spoils. I mean, so do plant-based products, but you don't have to worry about cross-contamination as much if you're plant-based, which is really nice because I realized that it's so funny because in January, we bought a box of latex gloves because we both didn't like handling raw meat so much. And now we don't have any meat in the house, but it's nice to have latex gloves in a pandemic. So
absolutely,
that kind of worked out. But yeah, you don't have to worry about cross-contamination. Your trash never really smells. It's like a weird fringe benefit. Highly suggest.
Awesome. Can I ask you a couple other questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
We're tangenting back to music a little bit.
Okay, cool.
What is, in your opinion, the most common misconception of classical music or the classical music world?
The most common misconception is that, and this is all of our faults collectively in classical music, is that it's elitist. And unfortunately, sometimes I think that's true, but there's been a lot of really good strides to make it accessible for everyone while not being pretentious about it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about that topic a lot because I think there is a generation in which we were trying to make ourselves elite by winning these competitions and, you know, or just saying like, oh, this is the stature of which I've achieved this monument in my life and no one else can play
this award. And,
no one can play this piece the way I play it. And I have a recording that's selling out at Deutsche Grammophon or whatever. And I think that that was something that we all were striving for, maybe. And of course we still are. We want to be supported and appreciated for the hard work we do. But I think it's almost gone too far in the elitist side of things to the point where it's alienating, right?
Yeah, totally. And also it becomes so ego driven. It's all about you. Why do I want to see you perform? I want to experience something that's just meaningful. And so I think that turns people off, and everyone has to work hard to make sure that that's not happening.
Right. Cool. And my last question is, after all the impact that COVID has done to classical music, what do you think is something positive that will enhance and carry on in classical music?
It's definitely forcing people to kind of come down from that ivory tower, so to speak. I mean, it's true even at the SFS. You're not in this mass of 100 musicians on stage with a good concert base. You have to put yourself out there and do kind of more of that legwork and show that you want to provide something for the greater good, for the community, for listeners. And so I think it's a really interesting opportunity that basically everyone's been thrown into, is how to ensure that kind of authenticity and having to be put out there, I think will really help, because ultimately that's why most musicians went into music, is because they had a moving experience, right? And they want to continue that or provide that to other people. And sometimes if the ego gets in the way, that can be problematic. And now it's just like, you got to lay it out there, because we've been thrown out of whack, and that'll kind of bring it back to what was really the genesis of a lot of people were playing this music before electricity existed. And so I hope it really brings that spirit kind of back into the communities.
It's so funny. Every time I ask that question, I get such different answers. Which,
oh, really?
Yeah, which to me is so inspiring, because it's so easy to look at the facts and say, okay, yes, I am unemployed. Yes, I'm furloughed. Yes, I can't teach my chamber music students because I can't really rehearse with my quartet right now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I'm glad that there's so many positive outlooks from that question. It's just, so keep them coming, guests.
Yeah.
So is there anything at this point that you want to plug? You can say no.
Plant-based diet. Try it out. That's the only thing I would plug. And it's only if you want to do it. Don't do it because you think you should. It's just say try it out. See if you feel better.
And if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please subscribe and leave a hopefully positive review on Apple Podcasts. It helps this podcast reach more people, and it makes me feel pretty good. You can also give feedback at our email, haydnmusicstand@gmail.com, if there's something you'd like to suggest or just to say hi. Sharing with your friends and family is a free way to support this podcast. And if you would like, you may also visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/haydnmusicstand. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Haydn Music Stand, to access more content. Thanks, Erin, for being on the show. I miss you a lot.
Thanks, Patty. I miss you too. It's good to see you.
Hugs from afar. And thanks for listening. Sushi, say bye.
Is that sushi?
No, it's a balloon. I'm sorry, I forgot the balloon was there.
My cat?
No, she was lying down here for a second, but maybe I'll grab her. Oh, she's right here. Hold
Sushi.
Sushi needs to make an appearance. Sushi butt. Hold on.
Oh, Sushi. You're so cute. Oh my gosh. I want a cat. I feel like everyone wants a pet in quarantine.
Oh, she is. I'm so glad that she's in my life.
Mm-hmm.